is up? Welcome to Welders of IG. I'm Joel Ridzak. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Make sure you get on the Patreon at patreon.com/welders of IG. That way you'll get your content a day or two early and be automatically entered into one of our giveaways. We're giving away shirts, hoodies, welding hoods, all that good stuff. So make sure you get on there and help your boy make that
internet money, bitch.
All right, awesome. All right, we have a very, very important guest today. He's coming all the way from the land of Tim Hortons. He's a badass Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's nifty with the NFTs. He's a master of memes. You might know him as Because Jitsu. I know him as Drew Weatherhead. Please welcome Drew Weatherhead. What's up, Drew?
Hey, how's it going, Joel? Thanks
doing,
for having
brother?
me on.
Yeah, man. Good connecting with you. Hope your Sunday Easter is going well. Dude, so before we get started, if you're not following Because Jiu-Jitsu, you are a white belt at life. You're missing out on some top shelf memes. Every day I look forward to looking at your meme page, dude. I get at least 3 good laughs out of there. Your content is great.
Thanks, man. It's one of those things I've been doing steady since I started doing it. Like, I literally haven't missed a day. So if you're following, there's always at least something per day to check out.
Okay, so you have a truly incredible story. You escaped from Canada during the pandemic, but before we get into that, tell us a little bit about your welding background and how you transitioned to owning your BJJ gym and how you went about that.
Okay, so I got into welding shortly after getting married because I was working at, like, I think at that point, like Subway or some shit, something that a married person shouldn't be working at. Well, they're supposed to be, you know, the head of the household. And my wife's father, so my new father-in-law, was not only a beat pressure welder, but he was a hot tap welder. So he's like super specialized and had some,
Wow.
yeah, he had some hookups in a few of the trades that I was like, well, fuck it, let's get into some trades. This is easier than trying to get like a degree in something. I can actually get my hands dirty and do some work and learn a skill instead of just some thoughts in a school. And so I started out doing the apprentice pipe fitter thing for a few shutdowns just to get into the trades itself. Wasn't a big fan of the pipe fitting, being a gopher and being, you know, pushed around for tools and shit. But once I got back from the shutdowns, I had a bit of money and looked around for an actual welding job. And I found one in Sylvan Lake, Alberta, where I was going to be welding aluminum boats. So actually my first welding job was welding aluminum MIG, which is kind of weird for like literally the first time I ever touched a welding gun ever. Any type of welder was aluminum MIG. So it was a steep learning curve for sure, because that's some fickle shit.
Yes. The metal has to be super clean. It's very loud and annoying too. You got to put your earplugs in.
Yeah, you got that buzz going on. Plus, when you're grinding it, it turns into like this aerosol powder. So you've got like a 3G mask on with certain respirators, and you're just covered in aluminum dust all day. It was a mess, but to be honest, I had a lot of fun with it because I'm kind of an artistic person to begin with. I liked drawing and sketching and stuff growing up, so I was good with my hands, and it is very artistic in that way. Once you get like the hand skills down for it, you can get really proud of how nice you can get. It's like a constant challenge. You're trying to beat your best weld last time, and I found that I picked it up pretty quickly. And I was there for only like 5.5 months before I went to school for my first year. And then ended up switching over to a different job into steel, because I could see like everything was in steel. Aluminum was fun. It was nice to get into, but there was no end goal in it. It was like, I'm stuck at this company if all I can weld is aluminum, because everywhere else welds steel. So
Yep.
I went through my first year, learned some stick, learned some MIG, some flux core, the whole thing. And then I'm like, okay, I got to get into some sort of steel. So I found like literally the shittiest job that nobody wanted, which was welding garbage cans at a factory down the street from where I was. Universal handling. So we were building dumpsters and like big, almost like sea can sized dumpsters, those ones you see on construction sites. But all it was quota based. It was the worst place to learn how to weld steel, because they would just crank all the dials to 11 and just downhill everything as fast as possible to put as many of these shitty things out as possible, because nobody cares what your garbage can is built like.
Right. Just weld it hot and fast, get it out the door.
Yeah, that's right. So I kind of got used to the idea of steel from there, and then once I got through my second year, I was like, "Okay, I can't get good here. This is not going to be good for my career." So I got out of that, got into some actual welding shops that required some skill in steel. Learned how to actually set my own dials and got good at that. So long story short, once I got my journeymanship, I was welding for a place called Accuform that was basically just a forming shop, but I was in a specific department that was building these things for the oil rigs that were called pipe wranglers. That are these, it's like a push-up unit that you put up to a drilling rig that will fire up your pipe up onto the rig to shove down to the hole. Anyways,
Okay.
it was it was kind of an interesting project that excuse me, got me welding on some heavier wall HSS stuff. So I got good with flux core there. I had to, get better at fitting because they were like 50-foot long. So your dimensions had to be just right, or else, if you're a quarter inch off at 50 feet, you're 3 feet off by the end, kind of thing. So you got really good at cutting on the saw, and it was fun. And then I got laid off, like everybody. Welding, I'm sure you and everybody listening knows, it goes in cycles, especially in Alberta. Everything's tied to the oil field. And I found that like every 2 years or so, you'd get laid off. It was just like this boom and bust, boom and bust, boom and bust. You'd make bank during those 2 years, and then you'd be broke for like 6 months to 2 years looking for another job while everything was scarce, right? So
Right.
my first solution to that, actually the worst version of that was 2008, where there was just no welding jobs anymore. The crash happened, and for like a year and a half, there was no welding anywhere. It wasn't like there's a few jobs, they all have them. There was just nothing going on. Everything was shutting down. And so I ended up driving truck, picking up a different semi-trade, I guess pun intended, for about a year and a half until I could get back into welding. It started picking up again. But then I had a little bit of forethought. I'm like, okay, the last time I went through this, I don't know, 7 or 8 years in at this point. I was like, I can see that there's a boom starting, which means there's a bust coming behind it. So I got to find some way to sort of shield myself from this next thing. And I set myself up. Well, I was in a good job. I was looking for another one that was unionized, that I knew that if there was a bust coming, that I had some sort of shield to that inevitability, because it gives you something, right? If you can have some seniority under a union, then you've got some sort of buffer between you and the pavement. And so I found my way.
Yep.
I found my way into a union job. Thankfully, it was probably the best job I could have got in Red Deer, which is the area of Alberta where I'm around. And it was working for a Caterpillar dealership called Finning. So they're a multi-billion-dollar international corporation that was fully unionized. They were in a union for like 100 years. This union's been around. So it was a total shift in culture and psychology, where every other welding job I had been at, you were trying to do the best you could so that you could be the best there, so that they were going to keep you around, so that, you made your quota, and everything was like, you're trying to be the best, trying to be the best. Once you got into a union, it was weird. Like everything flipped. Suddenly the lead hands and the foremans were afraid of you. Like you didn't have to do shit. And if they told you to do something, you said fuck off, they just fucked off. It was the weirdest thing ever. So in this strange way, I found myself in a stable job, but it was so stable that it was surreal. It was like, you can go to work for 10 hours and only really work 2, and they aren't going to say shit. It's weird.
Damn.
It was very weird. It was almost uncomfortably comfortable, where you could be lazy. And I was there for about 5 years. And at that point, I'm kind of grateful for this. I probably would have stuck around and been a lazy welder for the rest of my life. A miserable lazy welder, by the way. I was pretty miserable in this job because it was extremely heavy-duty welding on like very thick cast steel that was like anywhere from 3 to 10 inch thick shit, where you'd be using like arc gougers all day. Some of them, they were using those, what's the step up from arc gouger where you got the giant rod? You know the one? They cut through like cement and shit. You know the ones.
It's slipping. I know what you're talking about. It's
Yeah,
slipping my mind right now.
yeah.
But yeah, you're
There's some of that.
gouging.
Yeah.
You're trying not to breathe in fumes. It's super
Oh yeah,
loud. You're making pass after pass
for
after
sure.
pass.
They were really good because it was a union that safety first was their main thing. It was one of their major culture things, but they would set you up with these AdFlow helmets so you'd have like proper respiration coming through a ventilator under your hood, and they had like snorkels that would go over where you're welding, but it was like, dude, you couldn't help having just black snot every time you were there. You couldn't help it, you know.
Yep.
And it was just very hard on the body, really bad positions for just an entire shift at a time, working overhead, gouging, filling, and it was good to, as far as a welding job was concerned, that you were secure, you got good pay, you had lots of benefits, but it beat the shit out of your body pretty bad because the thing um, about cast material is that you need to be very careful about the brittleness of what you're welding. So we were using a very specific wire that had certain carbon that needed to be peened after every pass. So you had a pneumatic needle peener that would just sort of rattle on top of this thing that would supposedly make it more malleable between passes, so you didn't get like stress buildup in between that would crack later on as it cooled down. They're very specific about their procedures. But the thing about using these needle peeners and grinders and gougers over and over and over is really, really hard on your body because you're taking that vibration through your hands, through your wrists, through your elbows. It got to the point that my right arm had arthritis in my fingers, tendonitis in my wrist, and bursitis in both my elbow and my shoulder. So every joint in my right arm was fucked up. And then I was doing jujitsu full time. So like gi jujitsu, where
Also really good for your body.
where your arthritis is being like magnified times 10. So I was miserable. I was in pain all the time. I was working long shifts that I didn't want to in conditions that were not getting any better. And so, like I said, I probably would have stuck around there and been an ordinary, angry welder for the rest of my life, but I wanted out, and thankfully this situation popped up where I kind of ended up getting fledged out of the nest because Finning got bought out by a company that basically liquidated our location and moved it all up north into Fort Mac. So I had a choice at that point, as did every welder that was high enough in the what's the term, I just lost it. I said it earlier. It's when you're in a
Seniority?
union. Seniority, thank you. High enough in the seniority, you got this choice to either follow the work up north, which I had never wanted to. That was one of the main things when I was welding that I tried to avoid at all costs, is I want to make sure I can go home every night because I got kids, I got a wife. I don't want to be that guy that goes up to camp for 3 weeks, comes back for a week, is a total bastard to his family, goes up north again, spends it all on booze and drugs, and comes back. And I've seen it too many times. Like, it's the prototypical welder is that guy, you know. And in Alberta, you see they're all like that. It's cliche. And I'm like, okay, I got to avoid that. So that was kind of off the table. It was either like, if all they're going to give me is go up north, I've got to quit. You know, we're done at this point. But they had a second option for people that were in the union long enough, and I was at that point for 5 years, to take a severance. And the severance ended up being approximately like $10,000 per year that you were there. And so it was good, right? It was a really good union. They took care of you. It was a very wealthy company that wanted to take care of you. So I took my about $50,000 as a severance, and I made the decision at that point with my wife. I sat down with her. I'm like, look, I don't want to go up north. You don't want me to go up north. I don't really have a lateral job to go to right now that'll pay anything close to what we're paying. So there's about to be a shift in the income, and we're in a single income family. My wife takes care of the kids at home, you know. So my decision is our decision. And
right, you have 4 children, by the way. Correct?
Yeah, that's right. At that point, I think it was 3.
That's
but
a lot of mouths to feed.
It is, yeah. So every decision counts, right? You make a decision and you have to go for it because the ramifications require you to succeed. You know what I mean? Like there's no half-assing a decision like that. A lot on the line. Yep. And this will play further into the story as we get into it. Like, I've had to come to this crux in the road several times. But for this one, I made the decision. I was a brown belt in jiu-jitsu at the time, and I told my wife, look, I've always wanted to teach full-time, but it was kind of like a pie-in-the-sky idea. Now, all of a sudden, we have a nest egg that we didn't have yesterday if we take this severance, and I can invest this into, it will basically take care of our family for a year, while I try to get this business up and running. And so she said, you know what,
Hmm.
let's do it, because she wasn't new to the entrepreneurial thing. I was. This was the first time that I was really doing. I mean, I run jiu-jitsu tournaments in the past. I guess I had a little bit of experience in that, but not much. But like a full time running my own business, doing the corporate thing, I'd never had any experience with that. But her dad had, because he was a contractor his whole life, right? So he was his own company for welding. He was contracted out as a B pressure welder or a hot tap welder. So she was more used to it than I was. She actually encouraged me to do it when I brought the idea up. I'm like, cool. That's actually really cool. We're going to do this. So we did. I put everything into this gym for, to get it off the ground. We were paying it back. To be honest, we never really paid it back, but we were in business for about a year and a half before the pandemic hit.
Okay, so you were starting to make money at your gym. Your students were happy. Accounts were starting to be out of the red, and then COVID hits.
Yep,
So
that's
what
exactly it.
happened when COVID hit?
Well, I mean, you, the weird thing about COVID in general, like the pandemic, is it's not one thing, and I have to constantly remind myself and others when I'm talking that it's very time specific. So you have to take yourself retrospectively back to the time that we're talking about. When I'm talking about like March of 2020, where we were seeing videos coming out of China, where we had like rumors that things were starting to happen in Seattle. And it's like, okay, this just made ground in North America. People are starting to get worried.
Hmm.
I remember being concerned touching the buttons on the ATM because I didn't know who had the plague. You know what I mean? Like nobody knew what it
Right.
was.
They
No,
scared the shit out of everybody right from
absolutely.
the
We
get
thought
go.
this
Hmm.
was the bubonic plague, and this is all of a sudden in your country. So we were all very worried about it. And being a gym owner and being a conscientious um, person, I was like, okay, I'm in an industry where coincidentally I wanted to go into jiu-jitsu to get out of welding, specifically so that I would be outside of the purview of market trends where you've got these booms and busts and booms and busts and your company has to ride or sink because of them. I'm like, okay, I'm going into an artistic field that is specific to my effort I put in. People are paying me for my art, right? It's basically like I'm an
Hmm.
artist, except I'm a martial artist, right? So I feel like as long as I can make it happen, nobody else can have an impact on that. And lo and behold, we come into this strange part of history where touching people becomes anathema.
Whoops.
So being a conscientious gym
Yeah.
owner, I made the preemptive move to shut down my gym even a week before the province required me to, because I'm like, I don't want to be responsible for somebody killing their family member by getting some disease we didn't see contracted during this thing where we're touching and sweating all over each other.
No, and you were like, better be safe than sorry. You didn't know who was necessarily affected. They were saying it was primarily old people, but then the news tells you, oh, this 25-year-old athletic person got it and they're dead.
Yeah.
And I mean, people got freaked out. So lockdowns were really harsh in Canada. Tell us about that. I know it went in stages and it kind of went back and forth. It was kind of hard to keep your gym open, correct?
Yeah, it was. Alberta actually, we've got the most fuck you energy of any of the provinces in Canada. We're kind of the Texas of Canada. But that being said, we're not
Hell
Texas.
yeah.
Yeah. Like we did our best. And there was we went through, as far as the gym was concerned, we went through three separate lockdowns in about a little over a year, about 16, 17 months. And the first one was somewhere between 4 and 5 months straight. And this was 2 weeks to flatten the curve. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
we were
Yeah.
all like, okay, we're down for the cause. 2 weeks, absolutely. I'll shut down for 3 weeks if you need me to, because I can handle that. We're in the black now. We were just at the point where I was ready to maybe buy some new mats, look at a bigger location. Like finally we're at the point where I'm growing as a business. So I can handle this for the sake of community. Everybody's gonna be safe, everybody's gonna be happy. We'll see you next month. Well, next month rolls around, they say we need 4 weeks. Okay, then it's 6 weeks, and then it's 8 weeks, and then 10 weeks, and it keeps going. And
Hmm.
it got to the point where we were at like 4+ months of 2 weeks to flatten the curve, and it was just indefinite. Every single day we were waiting to hear if there was something new. There was nothing on the horizon. And I was probably 2 weeks away from broke and having to shut down my gym and just close it up, because I was like, this could be the whole rest of the year. And I've got to keep at least a little bit of money to feed my family while I'm broke looking for a new job and paying off all these debts that I've now incurred. So, with the 2 weeks to flatten the curve turning into a little over 4 months, it just so happens that right before I completely broke and had to make the decision to shut down, um, the province says, we're opening back up. We like the numbers now. These stats are good enough. We're going to open up for the summer. It was like the end of June, I think. And um, it's funny looking backwards in 2020, we thought that, I remember thinking, okay, we did the thing. We barely survived this. We shut down. The economy is ruptured at this point. Like we did the best we could. They'll never do that again. You know, they're never going to do. They had one shot. They stretched it out even longer. Yeah, they stretched it out even longer than they said they were going to. They got the best they could out of it. Thank God it's over. We made it, right? Flash forward. we made it for, I think, about the end of October. They started talking about lockdowns again. And this only makes sense retrospectively. Again, if you think back to what we were thinking at the time, we were like, they aren't actually going to lock down again. Like, we know that they can't do that again. We're still recovering from the first time. Everybody is. Like, I lost 50% of my students in that time and had just got them back at that point, like with new students. You know, it took me that much time, like 5 months or so they let us work, to get back to where we were before the first lockdown. And I'm like, they can't do this again, you know. But now, knowing what we know, it's like, of course they were going to do it. Because they had already got the social approval that they're allowed to do this, which they've never been allowed to in the past. So it's, for them, it's just a switch that they flip. It's not a big decision. Whereas we're like, you know, this, we can't do that again. Obviously we can't do that. They're like, yeah, well, we got to switch now, and then we're going to flip it. But also, looking back just from the basics of what we know about this virus, it's a seasonal bug. You know, it is a novel coronavirus, which gets worse in the fall and the winter. So go figure, as the fall came around into October and into November, it started bumping up because now the numbers are coming up, right? The seasonality of this bug starts coming around, and they start blaming everybody else for it. You know, this, at that point, I remember them saying, like, oh, people aren't social distancing anymore. People aren't wearing masks enough. They are, you know, people who are not being safe are the problem. So because you guys aren't being safe, we're forced to shut down again. They always turned it on us, you know, like, we're bad boy. We're going to make sure that we punish you guys, and you do better, and then we'll let you out of detention. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Stop being the super spreader.
Right. Yeah. It was all finger pointing from the politicians down to the people, which is extra fucked up because they never suffered from it. You know what I mean? They were just the ones putting the suffering on people. They never lost a paycheck. They never had to miss a meal. They never had to think about their job. You know, it was always just like, yeah, we're in this together. Bullshit, we are. You know, like, you're the taskmasters above that are limiting us, what we can do, whether or not we're allowed to make a living, you know, whether or not we're allowed to see family members. And at this point, this lockdown started for real near the beginning of November. And they said it's going to be 6 weeks. So I was like, oh my God, at least we're going to have Christmas, right? 6 weeks is going to lead us into about the middle of December. We'll be back for Christmas. And it was like a week before Christmas where they're like, guys, we still don't like the numbers. So here's the thing.
Right.
Not only are we going to continue this lockdown, but also we're going to make it illegal for you to come into contact with anybody outside of your household, including family members, over the holidays. I know you guys want to have this thing called Christmas or whatever, but that's canceled this year. So stay at home, Amazon your shit to your door, don't go out. And if you are caught interacting with another household, it's going to be a $1,000 fine for every individual person. And if a business that's not allowed to be open is open, there's going to be a $50,000 fine.
Wow.
So,
holy crap.
It's this thing again where it's only illegal for poor people. You know what I mean? Like, people who are well off, they didn't give a shit about those types of implementations. They're like, you know, even if you catch me, it's $1,000. I don't give a shit. It's like, I'll give you that out of my wallet right now, kind of thing. Or these politicians, they all broke their rules. In fact, it was constant hypocrisy, and you saw it in the news. And they were like, oh yeah, sorry, whoops.
Yeah.
we'll do better next. We're all in this together, guys.
Yeah.
Bullshit. So then Christmas rolls into Easter. This is all still the same lockdown. Easter gets canceled. So two of the most major holidays of the year, not allowed to be around family. I remember my in-laws, who only lived like 20 minutes away, coming to our door at Christmas, all wearing masks, staying like 10 feet away from the door, saying hi to the kids, not allowed to touch them. And that to them was a step of defiance. They were worried that if other people were seeing them even close to the house, they were going to get narked on, and there was going to be cops showing up. You know what I mean? Like that was as far as they were willing to
there
go.
were a lot of snitches out there. There were a lot of Karens peeking out their window, tattletaling on people. It's crazy.
Yeah, the last couple of years, they turned Karens into super Karens, and they gave them these abilities where they could like bring down the hammer of God on people just for a lark. Yeah.
All right, time to talk about making money online. If you're like me, you like making money. You like those big OT checks, but it's never enough. You know you need to have another stream of income coming in. Inflation's going crazy right now. The price of gas is up, food is up, and your purchasing power is going down daily. But you're in luck. There's never been an easier time to make money. And to help you with all that, there's Hustlers University. Once you get inside, you'll be connected with verified multimillionaires and have access to 18 wealth creating courses from freelancing, crypto, copywriting, and drop shipping, just to name a few. You will be given the tools to make money easily online. For only $50 a month, you try it out. You don't like it, cancel anytime. So what? You're only out $50. Who cares? But trust me, you're going to love the service. The courses are awesome. And above all, you're going to love the mindset that it gives you. You need to get in now, though, before they raise the price. You'll be grandfathered into that $50 a month price, just so you know. I use this service. I've made money online, and you can too. If I can do it, you can do it. It's super simple. Go to the link in my description of the podcast, or go to the link on my Instagram bio and buy directly from there. If you click it, you click around, you explore the site, that's okay. Go back to that link and order directly from there. It really helps out the show, and it'll help you make money. So get on Hustlers University and get you some dope. So you're in this lockdown. You start going, hey, we're not going to make it. We've got to make another pivot. So what do? What do you sit down with your wife and talk about doing?
Yeah, well, leading up to that decision, one thing that people have to realize is every single month that goes by is another month that I have to pay for all of my bills without the ability to make money. So we're broke at the time that basically the end of December, we were completely broke. I had, I think, $80 in my bank account and tens of thousands of dollars of debt. And it was rough. We had to, for every single month after that, basically magic hat between $5,000 to $10,000 out of thin air to make it another month, hoping that the lockdowns were going to stop. And I did that for about 5 months because the lockdown continued up until I ended up shutting it down at the end of May. But every single month up to that, 5 months, I had to go and figure out some way to make enough money, literally to just survive, not to thrive, to just survive to the next month. And I did that through e-commerce online, specifically using my social platform through Because Jitsu, which is my jiu-jitsu meme page. At that point, it's like 160,000 people on Instagram. And that was, that's huge. That helped a lot. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have made it that far. But I leveraged everything I could through t-shirt sales, through rash guards, through instructionals, through everything I could think of to try to make enough money to make it to the next month. And that trick only worked so many times. I was surprised it worked as many times as it did. And I had to sit down with my wife again, have the same kind of decision that we talked about once I left finning. Is, look, this is unsustainable. It shouldn't even have been sustainable up to this point. And it's time to make a decision about what we're going to do because the gym is dead. And it was a really hard decision to make, to be honest, because I had poured my heart and soul into this thing for 3 years. And, I was starting from zero no matter what. So what the decision actually had to be made was not only we're shutting down the gym, what do we do next? It was where do we start to even build back from? And the real heart of that decision is we have to sell the house to have anything to start with. And so
Damn.
we're in a house with 4 kids, 2 adults, and looking to sell it just to have the equity from it to be able to make a decision to move laterally. Like this word people like to use, pivot. This is a hot word that people use during the pandemic. So you just got to pivot, guys. Just find that pivot button and hit the pivot button. It's not
simple.
A thing.
It's simple.
Yeah, what pivot looks like in real life is they're going to drop you in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and let you dog paddle till you find something. That's pivoting.
Oh my.
It's
Yeah.
not fun, and a lot of people don't make it through. In fact, you wonder why the unemployment rate skyrocketed, why suicide rates skyrocketed. Man, there was a person behind me where I lived, a young family, worked in the oil field, who I heard about third hand, killed himself. He went out to his garage and shot himself. He had a wife with 3 young kids, and this was right next door to me, right across the alley. And this was a story that is, it goes on ad nauseum. Anybody you talk to knew somebody who did something like that, or was in a situation where they're, it was bad. It was really, really bad.
Yeah.
Anybody
You're losing
tied
your life's work.
Yeah, exactly.
Your life savings, everything.
Anybody considered non-essential really felt non-essential. You know what I mean? Like there was no hope.
Yep.
So we made the decision not only to sell the house, but instead of to buy another house or to go into a rental or a small apartment or some sort of condo living or low income situation. Thankfully, in this weird turn of events, the real estate market was really hot at that time. And when we put our house up, we got not only asking price, but we got it from the second person who walked through the house. So the first day it was on the market, it sold. So that, in this very strange way, gave us essentially the same nest egg as we had when we left Finning. We had like $55,000 in our pocket all of a sudden. And it's weird. It was like you actually hit the reset button on the video game console and you started back to where you made that decision last time. And this time, my wife and I decided, instead of going back into a house, is we are going to put it into a travel trailer, and we're going to move our whole family into basically a mobile home and move around and live like that. It's going to take a lot of the overhead off of, we don't have a mortgage anymore. It's bought outright. We had both our truck and our trailer paid for from that nest egg. And, it changed the lifestyle quite a bit, which is cool. It was something that she had kind of wanted to do later in life anyway. She wanted to do like a travel thing and get around and live in a motorhome maybe pre-retirement, maybe post-retirement, but it just kind of like pushed the issue to the point that like, I guess we're doing this now.
Pre-retirement.
Yeah, very pre. And so that's what we did, and that's what we've been doing since June of last year.
Wow. So once you got across the border into the land of the free, how did your kids feel? And there was also some trouble with your trailer too. They wouldn't let you go over the border with it directly. You had to get help from an American friend, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this, again, if we sort of fast forward in the chronology of the pandemic, this is coming into October of 2021. And so for people who aren't Canadian, it won't click as much as where we were at that point, but especially for people who were, and I'll explain it for people who weren't. Coming up in November of 2021 was an edict coming down from the federal government, from Justin Trudeau, our famed pride and joy, our leader of all things good and holy, Justin Trudeau.
Oh my God.
Decided that vaccinated or unvaccinated people were the problem. He made it his goal in life to punish people like that and to make it hard for them to live. And if it wasn't hard enough to live already, it's weird, man. I decided to start a gym thinking that I would be safe from market trends. Nope. I decided to wait on the vaccination because I felt like I didn't need it, and I wanted to see long-term results before I decided to inject myself with something I couldn't uninject myself with. Seemed like a reasonable idea. Nope. Both those things the government fucked me up the ass as hard as possible for ever since doing them. And in November of 2021, they decided that unvaccinated people will no longer be able to fly. They won't be able to fly internally in Canada from place to place, and they won't be able to fly out of Canada. And so at that point, the border had already been closed for driven travel between Canada and the US since March of 2020. So I knew I couldn't drive across the border. Look, I live in a travel trailer. How am I going to get across the border? I can't drive it across. And next month, I won't even be able to fly across. So one of the things, when you live in a travel trailer in Canada, you have to snowbird. You have to follow the weather because you can't winter in Canada in these things. It's not,
No.
they're not built for that. You know, you're in a tin can, and 40 below weather is non-conducive to tin can living. So we were looking into all sorts of ways to get across before November, before we couldn't fly, because at least before then we could fly across and somehow get our unit across the border, because the only thing allowed across were two things at that point: what they considered essential travel, which is essentially freights, truckers that are moving essential goods, doctors, I guess, were allowed, politicians, of course, because fuck them and fuck us, but also Americans who lived in Canada could go across, because you can't be denied entry into your home country. So I found that out, and once I found that out, I talked to one of my students who is an American citizen who married a Canadian up here, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that if you were to drive our unit across and we were to fly down to meet it, that would work. And we went through a bunch of different hoops. We talked to the border guards on a phone call. We did talk to some lawyers, got the documentation necessary for him to travel across with our property, and did that whole thing. We did 6 PCR tests at $250 a pop for our family. So like,
Holy shit.
yeah, $1,500 of tests. We did like $3,000 of flights, plus like it was like $6,000 or $7,000 by the time we finally got across the border to Montana, to cross the invisible line into the land
There
of the
goes your
free.
nest egg.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is the thing, is all of a sudden we put everything into being able to live in this trailer, and we had like a certain amount left, probably about 20 grand at that point or less, maybe 15, and we're spending essentially half of it just to get across to follow the weather. Because of all the politics. It's just politics, man. That's all it is. Any other year in the past, we just drive across. They'd say, "Where's your passport? Here it is. All right, have a nice time." But we finally we finally got across. We finally got across, and it's as it stands. As a Canadian, you're allowed to visit the U.S. for up to 6 months at a time, no questions asked. You just can't work down there, right? You need a work visa for that. But we could go visit, so we did that, where we went across. And long story short, there was a lot of moving parts that needed to all line up, and thankfully they did. They didn't have to, and there was a lot of stress involved in that. Our trailer nearly didn't get across. Our PCR test could have come back negative. The border guard at the Vancouver airport may not have liked that we were going to go down for 6 months and homeschool our kids. And, you know, there was a whole lot of things that we're waiting for all these check marks to come across. But long story short, we got across. Once we were in the land of the free, we drove from Seattle in a rental van to go meet our unit in Montana in Kalispell. And there's a story that I've told on a few podcasts, but it really nails the point down to how different it is between Canada and the US, where once I got to Kalispell area, we actually went down to Missoula to meet a friend of mine, because that's where I had to drop off the rental van. And once we got down there, I said, okay, let's meet up for some food and hang out with the family. So she's like, all right, let's go to a Wendy's. Sure. So he sends me the address. I show up. We get there a few minutes before, and I'm getting the kids out of the van. I tell my eldest daughter, who's 10, I tell her, run in and grab us a seat so that we'll have some space to, you know, order our food and meet our friend. And she looked at me worried, and she says, Daddy, don't I need the thing to go in there? And she didn't fully understand what was going on in Canada, but she knew enough to know that she wasn't allowed in restaurants because she's unvaccinated. And what she meant by the thing was the vaccine passport, which was, talk about conspiracy theories coming true. This was always something that was never going to happen. They would never do that. Oh, not only did they do that, they did that fast, they did that hard, and they made it seem like it was no big deal. But my daughter had not been in a restaurant for almost a year at that point. I looked at her and I said, not only do you not need a vaccine passport to go in there, you don't even have to wear a mask. And she lit up like I had just told her that the pandemic was over. And those little things that are taken for granted down in the US it was like crossing the Berlin Wall in Germany in the 70s. It was a totally different reality on the other side of this line.
Hmm. Yeah, I've taught kids martial arts for the better part of a decade. I know how malleable their minds are and how sensitive they can be. Uh, how have your children reacted to all this craziness over the last 2 years?
Yeah, it depends on where we were at the pandemic, but there's different reasons why there's different effects that it's had on them. Whether it was they had to wear a mask all of a sudden and never had to before, before that, and since then it was not being able to interact with their friends. They weren't allowed to go hang out at their house. They weren't allowed at jujitsu anymore. That all of that was gone. All of their interaction with their peer groups was gone. That was pretty rough on them, to be honest. The whole mask thing can't be understated. Like that was a big issue. Thankfully, being homeschooled, they didn't have quite the impact as kids that had to go to school and wear it all day. But I mean, I have youngsters who are learning how to speak that it does stunt their growth, not being able to see the expression and the movement of people's mouths. This is known psychology in child psychology that strangely is trying to be denied right now by people that would rather be cool wearing a mask for grandma's safety than admit that they're actually stunting the growth of an entire generation below them. It's been weird, man.
Jeez. Man, that's crazy. Well, I'm glad your kids were homeschooled and they kind of had a little buffer between some of that stunting of their growth. So you're down in the U.S. How many states did you visit in all? And which were your favorite states? I know you
Sure.
went deep south.
Yeah,
You went
yeah.
all over the place.
Well, again, being in a trailer, you have to follow the weather, and you're basically confined to the lower southern states during the winter because at that point, at least, it's it's like spring or summer Canada weather for most of their winter.
Hmm.
We visited 17 different states in 6 months, and it was it was interesting, man. What's cool about the states is that every individual state is kind of a country unto itself when it comes to how
Hmm.
it's holds itself and how it the laws within the borders. Whereas Canada, it's much more homogenous. Every province technically has their own rule and dictate, but it's less so than the states. In the states, it's much more stark. There were some states that were touted as like the freedom states that I was excited to check out, like Florida and Texas and some of the southern states.
Hmm.
Um, I wasn't overly impressed with them, to be honest. Like, yeah, they
Oh,
weren't doing
really?
the masks. They weren't, I don't know. It was less about the level of freedom. They definitely were more free than some states, but it wasn't. It just wasn't our vibe. Like it wasn't where I wanted to plant roots in some of them. Florida, actually, there was one area of all the places. There was about two places in the states where my wife's like, I could live here. One was Utah in Salt Lake City. That was wonderful. We enjoyed that a lot. And the other one was on the Gulf Coast of Florida, like kind of, I guess, northwest Florida along the Gulf Coast there. That was pretty nice. Um, but there was a few states that we ran into that were almost as bad as Canada, to be honest. And we were surprised when we ran into it because we weren't expecting it. We thought California was going to be like that. But to be honest, California is only like that online. They're only like that politically when they have to have an opinion on social media, on
Hmm.
Twitter, when their acting career depends on it. In reality, when you get there, everybody's kind of hush hush doing what they want. You know, you
Hmm.
don't see that because they're not allowed to talk about it. But it was more free than I thought. I thought it was going to be like a total communist state. It wasn't too bad. But going east from there, I found New Mexico was really bad. Like it was, I
Really?
didn't like New Mexico at all. It was very, it's kind of a poor state to begin with. A lot of
Yep.
poorness going on there, which, I mean, even outside the pandemic is not great. There's crime and there's, you're close to the border. There's a lot of issues with that. But also, they were very strict on their mask mandates and their social distancing and stuff, like long after a lot of states that literally bordered them weren't. And so it was like,
Hmm.
we got to get the hell out of here. This is a crossover state. So we were only there for like a day or two.
Hmm.
And another one like that was Georgia. I was surprised with that one because I thought, like, this is still deep south. This is right next to Florida. Like, why are these guys being
Right.
so locked down? But they really were. We tried to take our kids to some museums, like the Martin Luther King Museum was there. shut down. Nobody's allowed in.
Mm.
All the doors are chained, saying, for COVID reasons, restrictions, the spread, blah, 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 all the hot button words. There was masks everywhere. If you didn't wear a mask in Walmart, they would like chase you around and try to give you one. And like, it was fucked
Oh
up.
my God.
I know. And we were just coming from like Alabama and Louisiana before that. We're like, yeehaw, let's just like do whatever the hell you want.
Right, right. Yeah, it's kind of funny how there's these pockets where everything is like super policed by the people. They want your vax card. They want you masked. You can't enter a place without either of those.
Yeah.
Like King County, where I live in Washington, is like that. You go to Bellevue or you go to Seattle. You go to a restaurant. They want your vax card. You got to have your mask until you get to your seat. They're super super strict and super dicks about everything too. Then you go to the county where I actually live in, Snohomish County, which is just like a half hour outside of that. Nobody gives a shit. I don't wear a mask when I go to the store. Nobody asks. Nobody cares. It's just a total free for all, and it's just like a few miles away. It's pretty crazy when you hit those pockets. But luckily, I live in the free county, so that's nice.
Yeah, when we were in California, there was one of those. We were in Huntington Beach, and that one is like much more red as far as LA is concerned. It's like the red pocket, and they were like, "Go hard, do what you want."
Speaking of going hard, your podcast Social Disorder is amazing, man. You really have the best take on conspiracy theories, or conspiracy facts, as I like to call them. You seem to be able to absorb a lot of information, and you get the most balanced approach looking at these controversial topics. It's really good, man. Your episode on the World Economic Forum and the crypto conundrum was really, really good. I had to stop halfway through. It was so good. I just like, you kind of got to take a break and be like, okay, how many times am I going to listen to how these people are screwing me over, man? But I'm glad you're investigating everything. Is that the long-term podcast goal from here on out, just to kind of expose some of these conspiracy facts?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate it. Thanks for the nice words. I've been doing podcasts for years at this point that were almost primarily around jiu-jitsu, because I mean it was where my head was for like any given moment, any given day. I was a gym owner, I was a black belt, I was, filming instructionals. As my presence online was either through instructionals or through jiu-jitsu memes, so it made sense to do jiu-jitsu podcasts. But that's a topic that is very narrow. You can only talk about everything in jiu-jitsu 3 or 4 times each before it's like, what am I talking about anymore? This is almost like contrived,
Arm bars again, huh?
Yeah, well, let me tell you about those arm bars. Woo, boy. Yeah, you got arms, you can bar them, let me tell you. But in the meantime, like most of the conversations I'm having are outside of the jiu-jitsu sphere now, because the pandemic's been rolling on for as long as it's been going on, and it really, I don't have to explain to anybody. It tends to take over every conversation anyways. But
Yep,
because it does, I'm the type of person that I don't like to form an opinion until I have an informed opinion. I like to do as much research on something as possible, as weird as that sounds. I like to go a little bit further than the clickbait bullshit title on viral articles, and I want to see what the actual studies say. And in the process of doing that, more and more I was coming to my own conclusions that were counter-narrative. And it was bothering me that I felt like some pretty interesting information that was just socially faux pas to talk about. And it finally broke at one point where I was like, you know what? I'm tired of contriving these jiu-jitsu podcasts that I don't really care about anymore. And I feel like my audience is like just tuning in to hear what they know they're going to hear. And I want to talk about some dangerous topics that are actually what matters right now. Like stuff that isn't just like, well, now I have an idea of how to do a better armbar in class in this hobby sport that I do sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. I want to be like talking about what's actually like why I'm on the road, why I lost my business, why all of these things that are coming could be worse than that. And like, what are these people that are causing these things end goals? Where is this ideology stemming from? Like, we need to actually start looking into what is causing the reality that we are subject to, if we have any hope of trying to survive through it. Like up to this point, it's been reaction. I need something sooner than that. I need some preemption.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You can't be prepared for what you don't know,
Hmm.
what you can't expect. Like they caught everybody with their pants down with this pandemic. But if you would have read the World Economic website a few months prior, you would have been like, oh, they ran a test on this. Well,
Yep.
funny how that happened. But yeah, so I'm glad you're doing these podcasts. I'm glad you're uh, reading a lot and becoming well informed, because a lot of people just don't have the time. They're busy with their job, they're busy with their kids. I'm shocked you find time to do it. How do you do it? You seem like a really, really busy guy. Are you just nonstop, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m.?
Yeah, but I've been that way for so long that all I did was just shift slightly what my focus is on for the number of hours a day that I'm focused on things. So part of that will be focused on online stuff like my social media. Part of that will be focused on my kids. Part of that will be focused on my wife. Part of that will be focused on like my jujitsu going forward, as far as training, as far as filming, as far as you know, especially when we're on the road. Here's a weird thing that it sounds like a first world problem, but it doesn't mean it's not a problem, is that you kind of have to plan an entire vacation every 2 weeks or less, and
Mm.
it sounds like, oh, well, you got it real hard, but it really is like a lot of planning that takes up a lot of time to like see how far we need to go here, how much gas are we going to need, what's it going to cost per night, where's the food here, what's the Wi-Fi like, and it's like that just constantly. We, like I said, we were in 17 states in 6 months at 36 different campsites. It was a
Jeez.
moving puzzle, to be sure. um, but now, like, to answer your question, i I've always found, and this is something that if I could speak broadly to what I feel like has led me to the success that I've found in any field, whether it's jujitsu, whether it's online social media, whether it is entrepreneurship, whatever, you know, I tend to hyper focus on what interests me. So if something
Mhm.
interests me, I found it benefits me and everything that comes from it to like double down on my interests, because it's not work for me. It's what I want to be doing. And if I can make money and like progress myself in whatever sense, like my skills or whatever, in something I enjoy, then it doesn't have to be as difficult. You don't have to like kick your ass out of bed every morning like it did when I was welding for Finning, and like hate my job every minute I was there just to get enough money to go back to bed to do it the next day, kind of thing. And so for me, like every hour that I'm awake is trying to focus on things that I enjoy. And I'm thankfully at this point, this late into that type of daily transmission and transition into that mind space, it's gotten to the point that I can help to support myself through that, mostly through jujitsu right now. But the podcast is one of those things I want to grow up over this year, that by the end of the year, hopefully I'm making a good income off it as well.
Nice. Yes. Great life hack. I'm the same way. I'm excited to get up. I love welding. I'm excited to go weld. I have relatively easy welding job. I'm on a positioner all day.
Nice.
I'm excited about doing this podcast and editing videos. That's the life hack. If you make all your work not seem like work, then life is easy. So when you came down here, you started an NFT collection called Ape Shakas. Can you explain what an NFT is for our listeners and the utilities included in that, and how you're going to use those funds from that
Yeah.
NFT?
Yeah. So NFTs themselves are kind of a step removed from the conversation of crypto. So you need to lay a little bit of groundwork on crypto, which is where we lose most people. But if you have been following crypto, and I was at that point, I had gotten into it in like 2021 late, because a friend of mine I was still locked down. I had nothing better to do. And he's like, yo, you should check out this stuff. I'm going to show you how to use it. So I put like $1,000 into a couple different coins and was trying to play around with it for about 8 or 9 months before NFTs started popping on to that type of landscape. And
Hmm.
at this point, most people understand the idea of it, or maybe they misunderstand it, where you have some sort of graphic, whether it's an image or a video, that people are paying absurd amounts of money for. And why do they do that? This is where people get it mostly screwed up. They see these things like Bored Apes that are just like this cartoon ape that Justin Bieber bought for $500,000, and they're like, what the hell is this? Why, like, I can screen cap this. This is a JPEG. It makes no sense. Why would you spend any money on it when it's literally free in front of you right now? And what an NFT does is essentially a online digital contract. They call them smart contracts, where the same way that you would sign a contract to the deed for your house. So you got the deed to your house. That means you're the owner of the house. You had to sign something for that. Well, picture that it's digital. And what you get from that signature, what you get from that purchase that you've gotten through your bank and through the mortgages and through the loans and stuff, in the same way you can do this digitally for any type of service or product that you want that is tied contractually to this NFT. So, long story short, these images are basically like your ticket into a concert. Like the NFT is the ticket you hold in your hand. You don't pay $100 for something that says Metallica on it on a piece of cardboard and say, "Sweet, I got the Metallica cardboard." No, you take that cardboard to the location where they pull a piece off and let you in to go see Metallica. That's why you bought it. That's why you paid for it. And so an NFT is like the digital version of a Metallica ticket, where it gets you into the party, or it gets you into the utility behind it. And so for myself, once I understood that, I was like, oh, I see what this is. This is a ticket into a club. I've been building communities online for years at this point, through my tournaments, through my memes, through my jiu-jitsu. I'm going to hyper focus on building this community specific to this NFT. So anybody who buys this NFT, which there's a whole process, it's a whole different podcast to get into how to do it. But I did it. I sort of taught myself while it was still burgeoning, and did the work and made it happen. And my goal was, I'm going to put all the utility I can behind it. And utility is just a fancy word in NFT term, which means what do you get for owning this NFT? And I added in a whole bunch of stuff, between discounts on gear that I make, between free instructionals that I hold, between the major one that's happening later this year. I built a whole roadmap for the entire calendar year of 2022, and it will go further than that, but this is where we're at right now. The big one was, I'm going to do an in-person like jiu-jitsu convention only for people who hold this NFT. They get to come for free. They basically fly themselves down, and then they get to go into this exclusive jiu-jitsu con, where we're going to basically train and do seminars and have a good time for a weekend somewhere cool. And that was the party.
Oh wait, this is a
Welders of IG exclusive.
Nice.
Hyper exclusive. You're in the club too, so you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. So keep telling us more about all this exclusive content and tour that you're going to be doing.
Yep. So besides the fact that anybody who holds these NFTs, which by the way are all sold out right now. So guys, if you want to get in on this club, you have to buy it from somebody who already owns it, which is one of the benefits to being an owner, is the secondary market. Some people will buy them because they know they're going to be sold out and they can sell them for more and they make a profit. So there's a whole industry behind this thing. But the people who are in it for the club, they already got whitelist, which means early access to other jiu-jitsu crypto NFTs that were coming out. They recently just got an airdrop, which is a free NFT, which gave them extra utility as well as this extra market that they can sell and hold from for free for being a holder. There's going to be online digital seminars held a couple times leading up to the in-person one at the end of the year for people who can't make it, because some people are around the world. You know, I've got holders in European countries and Australia that like, I'd love to come to California or Texas, wherever you're going to hold this thing, but I can't. And so we're going to be doing some online digital ones for them, which will be pretty cool. We got one that I'm planning to set up in the next month, so that's coming up right away. And really, like, the whole goal for me is to build a tight club. Like, I want like a cigar club where you've got to be a member to come in, or a golf club where you got to be a member to come in, and then you just get like all these benefits that can be added on after the fact. And it's fun to be able to add them on. And then what it helps the community, well, first of all, what it helps the creator. Here's the thing, man. Like I told you, it's difficult to make money online. To make money in a new way every month was so difficult, but it built in like a tool set that I kind of got to hone against attrition, right? For those 5 months trying to keep my gym alive. And this NFT project ended up paying me as the creator more than I had ever made off any project ever. So we essentially, once it sold out, I made the equivalent in crypto of about 100,000 US dollars in about a week, which was wild.
Wow.
Yeah, and like again, we were before I got that income, which was at like the end of December, beginning of January of this year, we were already like scratching the bottom of our bank accounts before that. We've been through this a number of times, and it's this weird thing, man. I feel like we're in a simulation because I should have failed this game a few times, but I have these things that pop up that end up working. And to tie
Your
this all back
too
around,
strong.
yeah, I got
strong.
serious player one vibes.
Yeah. So did you help Gordon Ryan with his NFT collection?
Yes. So this was one that I've been working on the low for a little while. I've been working on it for about 3 months. The guys from Fanatics reached out to me after they saw the success of my own series. Actually, a number of people did, and I helped a bunch of different people, but they were like the big monster of the industry. For people outside of jiu-jitsu that don't know, BJJ Fanatics is like, it's kind of like the Netflix of BJJ instructionals. It's where you go for all of the best instructionals. It is just, there's nobody that even compares right now. If you want to go and find out how to be the best at anything in jiu-jitsu, all the best instructors have their stuff there. So it was a no-brainer. Like, you want to do an NFT, they want me to help. Here's the crazy thing, man. I was talking to Bernardo Faria, who's one of the co-owners of it. He's also a 5-time world champion, very well known in the art. And he's like, oh, Drew, I was very happy to get you on the project. I was thinking, like, you did so good in your project, you could help us. And if it wasn't, if you weren't interested in doing it, the next person I was going to talk to was the guy who did it for Gary Vee. I was like, holy shit. Yeah, thanks for coming to me first.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best, but this is what I mean. Like, they are that level. They're the people that are the apex of the industry who are looking for the best. And I was honored to get a position with them to help them with this thing. And so recently, as in like a few days ago, I think at this point, 3 days ago, maybe, Gordon Ryan, who is the best athlete in the world in jiu-jitsu right now, released his NFT through BJJ Fanatics, and I set that whole thing up for them. So I'm kind of like a small part of the project, but I am a part of the project. I'm happy to help them, and it's just another way to grow this type of income for people in the art moving forward. It's all very new, right? And so they need people like me that have a big meme page. They need people like Gordon, who's the best athlete, to sort of spearhead this effort so that it can trickle down, hopefully, to everybody in jiu-jitsu, like the same way that instructionals did. Like, years ago when I started, doing an online instructional was not an option. It wasn't a thing. It didn't exist. And then BJJ Fanatics made it a thing, and now it is the main income for hundreds of different black belt instructors around the world. That's like, wow, we've got this awesome option now, and I hope that NFTs end up being that for them as well.
And dude, people don't know this. Those instructionals make Gordon Ryan and some of the other black belts on there millions of dollars.
Yep.
It's no joke. It's real money, and that's like sometimes monthly income if they drop consistently. So yeah, nothing to sneeze at, dude. It's so crazy. This world is crazy. How was filming with Bernardo and BJJ Fanatics? I know you're dropping one of your series on there as well, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, part of the deal that they sweetened the pot with to get me to help them with their NFT was they're like, we should get you out to film some instructionals, because I did an instructional for them while we were in pandemic lockdown, where I just filmed it in-house in an empty gym with one cameraman and one partner to help me do it. And that I had been selling with them for about a year. And the other owner, Michael Zanga, he was like, hey, Drew, I was looking at your numbers, and they're actually pretty good. Like, I'm sorry, we got so many people, I didn't realize you were even an instructor on here. Why don't we get you out and film some more instructionals? We'll set you up. So they gave me a pretty good advance on flying down there. They paid for the flight and accommodations. They were very awesome as far as taking care of people. And we had some meetings in person about the NFTs, and I filmed 3 different instructionals over a 4-day period in Boston. And so those are going to be dropping probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And that'll be another monthly income that can help me, sustain this lifestyle online. And it's just these things that you start building up all these different income points. One of the things that I learned acutely while I was welding is that if all of your income is coming through one thing, it can all be taken away in one move. And I learned that again in the gym, where everything was, I need to start delineating these things into multiple incomes, because then at that point, at least I have some legs to stand on once one gets kicked out.
Oh man, dude. I'm so happy for you. You survived. You escaped tyranny in Canada. You escaped the pandemic. You got to travel with your family, enjoy the United States and all that it has to offer. So where do you go from here? What's next for Drew Weatherhead?
Well, we had this strange option in front of us coming down to the end of our 6-month visiting permit down in the States, where we had this money through the NFTs that I wasn't expecting. And I've been doing research in that time to see, is there a way that I can stay in the US for longer than 6 months? Because we were not thrilled about going back to Canada. We knew we had to legally after that 6 months. In fact, you can't even stay a single day after 6 months, or you'll be deported as an illegal and never be allowed back in again. There's horror stories of that. They're like, you have to be back within the 6 months. And so I talked to an immigration lawyer, a really good one, and we figured out that I could apply for this thing called an E2 visa, which would allow me to start a business down in the U.S., but it costs somewhere between 80 to 100,000 U.S. dollars to show proof of capital, to show that you can start a business in the U.S. They don't take your money, but you have to have it to show that you can do this. It's one of the prerequisites. And all of a sudden I had it. And so for the third time in this story, I sat down with my wife, like, we have to make a decision. We have the ability to start the process with customs that will allow us to stay down here. Even just starting the process will allow us to stay until it's been resolved, whether we get it or not. So we could stay longer than the 6 months while we're waiting for this thing to register, which would allow us to not go back to Canada, where we're still not allowed to fly, where if you cross that line going north, you are trapped at that point as an unvaccinated person indefinitely. They're not even talking about removing it at this point. It's permanent as far as they're concerned. So it's a fly trap. If you're going back there, you just can't come back anymore. And I could get deeper into that, but I won't. But essentially, we had to make this decision. Do we use what we have now to start this process of this visa, which wasn't an option before? On the other side of that, we can go back to Canada because we're up on our 6 months. It's coming up. And what are the pros and cons of both of those? And I thought, like, it was pretty obvious that all of the pros were on the US side. But the closer we got to that 6 months and the closer we got to making that decision, the more my wife and myself eventually started second guessing it, because we hadn't seen our friends and family in Canada for 6 months at that point. And especially our family, our in-laws, my kids' grandparents, my wife's parents, they hadn't seen, like, our kids had grown up and they're almost unrecognizable in those 6 months. Kids grew up fast, man. Like my 2-year-old became a 3-year-old, my 4-year-old became a 5-year-old, my 7-year-old became an 8-year-old. And like all of the different things that you see, the language changes, the personality changes. They're worried that they're going to start forgetting who grandma and grandpa are, and like legitimately, like they've only seen them every now and again on FaceTime calls. And it came down to the point that we had to make a really hard decision to risk the chance of never being able to come back into the States for the chance to go back and be with family, because we ended up doing that. We crossed back into Canada back at the beginning of April. And we've been back for about 2 weeks now. There's stories around that too. I'm not going to get into it. It's another podcast, but we are now essentially held here until they either change the laws or we have to make another decision later on down the road to try to get out of here again. Because like I said, we live in a trailer and we can't winter here. So something is going to change, or has to change, between now and October and November of this year. And that's where we sit.
Okay. So, man, that is a crazy story. You've been all over the place, a lot of ups and downs, but you're surviving and thriving, man. It's great to see. You're a real inspiration to me and to a lot of people. So keep doing what you're doing, man. Where can people find you, and where can people check out all your BJJ instructionals?
Right on. So best place to check out like a one-stop shop to find all the links that you want to find is just going to be to because_jitsu on Instagram or drew.weatherhead on Instagram. Both of them have the same links to the same places that just has like a laundry list of where you can find all my stuff, my podcasts, my instructionals, the NFTs, all that stuff is going to be linked in that hub that you'll find in my bio. So check out at because_jitsu or at drew.weatherhead, just how it sounds, weatherhead, and that's where you'll find me.
Great. Hey, thank you for coming on the show, taking time out of your busy, busy day, and wish you the best of luck, brother. Thanks for being on.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot, Joel.